The Honourable Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker.
Honourable members, the Honourable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, SC, MP, member for Siparia, has requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. Dr. Lakram Bodo, MP, member for Faizabad, has requested leave of absence from sittings of the House during the period July 8th to 11, 2018. And the Honourable Maxi Coffey, MP, member for La Hoqueta Talparo, has requested leave of absence from sittings of the House during the period July 9th to 31st, 2018. The leave which the members seek is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay paper number 1, the notification of Her Excellency the President, excuse me, in respect of the nomination of Mr. Harold Phillip for appointment to the office of Commissioner of Police. Thank you very kindly.
Public business, government business, motions.
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker,
Is this on? I haven't announced the motion number 1 as yet. That's where we are, motions.
I have a question to ask. I seek clarification. Madam Speaker, I rise to seek clarification on Standing Order 14. As you know, the last time we sat here last week, Tuesday, the Parliament was sine die by the Leader of Government Business. I received an email from the Parliament with an order in paper. So I seek clarification. What are we doing here today? Is it an ordinary sitting we have today, or what is the rationale for coming back here today?
Okay, Whip, as you're correct, we are proceeding under Standing Order 14, fixed recess, business during fixed recess, specific business. Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker.
Or Prime Minister.
I'm not the Leader of the House, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it appears as though things are getting stranger and stranger in Trinidad and Tobago. We've reached the point now where members of Parliament don't know why they're in the Parliament. And Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I'm talking to you. Madam Speaker, I rise and beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas Section 123(3) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Chapter 101, provides that the Police Service Commission shall submit to the President a list of the names of the persons nominated for appointment to the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police. And whereas Section 123, subsection 4 of the Act provides that the President shall issue a notification in respect of each person nominated under subsection 3, and the notification shall be subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives. And whereas the Police Service Commission has submitted to the President the name of Mr. Harold Phillip as the person nominated for appointment to the office of Commissioner of Police, And whereas the President has on the 2nd day of July 2018 issued a notification in respect of the nomination, and whereas it is expedient to approve the notification, be it resolved that the notification of the President of the nomination by the Police Service Commission of Mr. Harold Phillip to the office of Commissioner of Police be approved. Madam Speaker, in my absence last week, I followed the proceedings of the House and the commentary after. And there was a fair amount of confusion as to what exactly was the course being followed, both in the Parliament and outside the Parliament, even at the level of the Commission. I simply want to say, Madam Speaker, that if we start from the resolution of this motion, be it resolved that the notification of the President of the nomination by the Police Service Commission of Mr. Harold Phillip to the Office of Commissioner of Police be approved, then it sets us on the right track, that it takes a resolution in the House to take a decision on this matter. So therefore, I observed that the leader of the House, leader of government business, got notification that correspondence had come to this House, that this notification was with the House. I checked and I found out at the time, about midday or thereabouts, that this notification was not on the order paper. And whereas there are new members of Parliament and members of the public, I want to make it very clear that the only place that a resolution can be dealt with and dispensed with in this way is when it's on the order paper. So all the commentary about incompetence of the government and whatever is just so much hooey, because until it gets on the order paper, the government has nothing to do with respect to its affirmation. It has been put on the order paper this afternoon, and that's what we come here for, to put it on the order paper and to dispense with it. I want to thank the leader of government business for suppressing misinformation in the public domain. Because had the leader of government business not, upon observing that notification had come, had the leader not indicated right then and there the government's intention, God alone knows what sort of interpretations would have been put on the fact that the commission has sent this here. But the leader made it very clear, having been notified that this notification had come, even though it had not yet gone on the order paper, the leader of government business told the country by way of the House that the government will not be supporting this position. And that is what should have cleared up all the conversation. But there are some people, Madam Speaker, who either don't know why they're here or why the law should be followed. But subsequently, I also discovered from abroad that there was turmoil in the House, where the government which I lead was being accused of violating the Constitution and not following the Constitution. I want to make it abundantly clear, as I've said before, the government that I lead has no horse in this race. What the government has is a situation that is patently untenable, that in Trinidad and Tobago, its arrangements for appointing a commissioner of police is so convoluted and confused and sometimes contrived that for years we have not been able to appoint a substantive commissioner of police. That has been my lot as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. But I ain't complaining. Madam Speaker, we are following the law. As a matter of fact, let me say something else too. When you all created this law, I wasn't in this country. And I remember asking a reporter just what madness was going on. Because parliamentarians had decided that the system that had worked well since Tony May days all the way up to now ought to have been changed. And Madam Speaker, if ever there is a case to be made that change for change's sake or for ulterior motive does not always be changed for the better, this is it. Because what used to happen before, Madam Speaker, is that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, in the quiet of his office, would have received from the Independent Service Commission, after its assessment, a name of a person who the commission believes should succeed to the office of Commissioner of Police. The Prime Minister, who is also holding the office of the National Security Council chairman, had been given the opportunity to sanction or not sanction that recommendation of the commission. As far as history goes, and as far as I know, on virtually every occasion, or in minuscule situations, there might have been an intervention of the Prime Minister accepting or not accepting. And in which case, all he could have done, or she, would have been to say, I don't agree for reasons which sometimes might better be left unsaid. And that is how we went along all the years. The Prime Minister couldn't call up a name, couldn't put in a name, couldn't promote anybody. It was left to the commission to go back. The same thing we are doing now, to go back and look again, because what they had offered may not have found favor with the head of the executive. There are those who believe that the head of no executive should have that power over the Commissioner of Police. But they'll point to success in New York and London, where the Commissioner of Police falls directly under political control. And in some communities that are very safe and very, very well policed, the Commissioner of Police is elected at a ballot box. But they will tell you that the elected government of the country must have no say whatsoever. And I was abroad when I was told that there was a bargaining taking place. And the opposition bargained with the government to give up the veto, otherwise they would not support a package of legislation that was meant to fight crime. And let me point out too, that crime fighting wasn't an imperative under my government. Under the Manning government, criminals were running riot in this country to the point where a package of legislation came to the parliament, and to get opposition support, they bargained away the veto, and we put in place this camel designed by a horse committee. The next thing we know, that we put a system in place so that the Prime Minister must have no say in the appointment of a Commissioner of Police, because it is political. Bring it to the Parliament. And what we end up with now is veto on steroids. Because it falls to the majority in the House to vote for the person. No longer the Prime Minister in the quiet of his office, but in public ridicule and public misinformation and public whatever, that we are now doing this. This is the law. And I took an oath to observe the law and to follow the Constitution. That's why I'm standing in this seat. That's why I have the authority of Prime Minister, having taken that oath. So I don't know where it came from to be said in the public domain and even in the House. I understand that some members expel themselves on that score. We are following the law. It is the law and the Constitution we are following. We are following that Constitution. Why we accepted the notification and sent it to Joint Select Committee. Following the process. Whether we agree or not agree. We had serious disagreement about the processes used by the Commission, but whether we agree or didn't agree, we were following the law as outlined in the Constitution, therefore, to appoint the Commissioner of Police. It was turning out to be quite convoluted, and all kinds of assessments were being made, and are still being made. The country is confused. Where is this leading? But wherever it leads, we have to follow the law. The one thing I will not do, Madam Speaker, is to take advice, because you have plenty bad advice about. And as Prime Minister, you get a bucket full of that every day. I will not do anything that will create a condition for a legal challenge to succeed against this government because we're trying to fix the law or to fix the situation which was created before. We came here, when I moved the motion on the first nominee, I made it quite clear. I didn't go into any details. I didn't go into any details about the condition of that nominee, about his suitability. I went into details about our unhappiness about the process, because there were a number of prickly points around the process. The opposition also had some prickly points. But their position was they liked the nominee, and the prickly points were not sufficiently uncomfortable for the nominee to be dispensed with. The government didn't share that view. Subsequent to that, we expressed our concern. And I think, I'm not exactly sure, but I think we raised one of the concerns, because I was careful not to raise the details that we had, except I will continue to point out to continue to point out, and I want the people of Trinidad and Tobago to listen and to understand what I'm saying. There are 3 people in this country who understand and cannot say that they don't know the role, function, and effect of the National Security Council. One is retired Prime Minister Basdio Pandey. The other is former Prime Minister Kamala Prasad Bisasa and myself. And those who gave the Prime Minister in office that veto to be able to say yes or no, they knew something that many of us don't know. But of course, in some situations, some people believe that to not know. In fact, in this country today, there's a fashion that conversations start with, I don't know, but, and then they proceed to be a commentator. Madam Speaker, the law, as it stands now, asks that the order go through a certain process. On becoming Prime Minister, it was like pushing a stone roller up a hill to get this process started. Even though we hadn't had a commissioner for years, and there was one being renewed every 6 months. To get the process started, I got to the point, and it's because the Prime Minister has no role in the matter. Let me make that very clear again. For all those who call on the Prime Minister to appoint a Commissioner of Police, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet have no role whatsoever in this process. We have to wait until this notification gets here. Until this notification gets here as it did today, we know nothing about it and we have no involvement. And if we only poke our nose or our finger into it, they will accuse us of all kinds of things and the court could rule. We looked at the legal options that we had and we made some slight adjustments eventually. But that was challenged in the court and was tweaked by a judge. So at least we thought we had something that was workable. That is as far as the government could have gone. And when that happened, and the Attorney General was pilloried from bench to bench, all he did was to get the process started. I got to the point in asking questions, quite respectfully. What is happening? Who is responsible? To be told about 4 different set of people who are responsible. When it's not the DPA, it's the Permanent Secretary. When it's not the Permanent Secretary, it's the Police Service Commission. The end result is, it's the President. Everybody involved, nothing happening. Eventually, Madam Speaker, after a significant amount of money was spent, I'm hearing about $3 million, 3-point-something million. I'm sure Neil and Massey, Mansa Makal, the government of Barbados and Jamaica, they don't spend any such money to get to a point to determine who they want to appoint as Commissioner of Police. But in Trinidad and Tobago, $3-point-something million for the firm to evaluate and to tell the Commission what the evaluation says. That is the law. Whether we like it or not, that is what we put in law. And it was passed into law. And we have to follow the law. So, it came here to us with all kinds of things. The one point that the government is not prepared to accept, and we said so early, with all those who evaluated, with all those who have horse, donkey, and mule in the race, the government's position is the process has been faulty, and the deal-breaking point for us is that persons who did not apply for the position of Commissioner of Police must not walk away with the position, because that, as far as we are concerned, was the ultimate in unacceptability. We made it quite clear. And it's on those grounds that we were able to say that the 2 names that were up front in the recommendation for Commissioner of Police will not be accepted by the government. Some people had difficulty in understanding that. Some people went out and made statements. It's because of somebody's race. It's because of somebody's gender. It's because somebody's tall. Because somebody's fat. We said we are not accepting that you apply 2 divisions. A division for commissioner, a division for deputy commissioner. People who didn't even think among themselves, inside themselves, maybe they didn't think they qualified for the job. Maybe they thought somebody knew something that will disqualify them from the job. So they apply for what they think they could manage. And what did the commission do? The commission makes one kalalu and serve everybody and then tell you that somebody who didn't apply for the position is now at number 1. I made the point here, and I actually went through how the numbers went up and down, capriciously. And the government says, we are not accepting that within the law. The government has that authority within the law to accept or not accept. Our colleagues don't have to agree with us. Maybe they would have done differently, and they would have been within the law, as they've done before. Because when we had Mr. Parker in a similar position, this is nothing new. A commission had sent a fellow here called Mr. Parker. He was number one up. Madam Speaker, please.
Prime Minister, while I understand where you're going, I really don't want us to rehash a debate that we've had before. I understand context, but I'm just advising you and all other members that this is about what is on the order paper. We've done within the session certain matters concerning process, and I really don't want us to go back into that debate. I don't think the standing orders permits us.
Madam Speaker, I will try my best to stay within the standing orders, but all I'm saying is that what I'm doing now is nothing new. For the benefit of the public, and being accused, Madam Speaker, on this particular nomination of not following the Constitution, I want to make it very clear that that accusation has no merit whatsoever. None whatsoever. Because we are following. In this country, we take serious things for a joke. To accuse the government of acting unconstitutionally by a colleague of Parliament is a serious matter. We have to address it, Madam Speaker. Anyway, this debate is not going to be a long one from our side. Simply to say that the law exists. I have been advised by the correspondence or some documentation, or probably in the public domain, I wasn't in the chamber, that the Police Service Commission has sought senior counsel advice. And so has the government, because we get ourselves advised all the time. We don't advise ourselves on matters of this nature. The law requires the creation of a merit list. That merit list for Commissioner of Police exists. We are on that list. The government is not prepared to accept persons who didn't apply for the job, and therefore, Mr. Harold Phillip does not qualify to get government support. Madam Speaker, what does that do now? I read in the newspapers from those who are following this issue, and the whole country is following it. Where does that leave us? Under the law, under the Constitution, the merit list exists. And I'm told that for the purpose of the order of this, that is section 4, section 5 of the order, the merit list exists. And it has been reconfirmed by senior counsel that the merit list exists. Whether we like who is on the list or not is not relevant. We are under oath in this House to follow the law. And the government will take the legal advice that we got, that the list exists. And if the government attempts to do anything outside of that, we open the door to legal challenge to be successful against the government, and I will not do that. So we follow the law. Today, we will not affirm Mr. Phillip, and the matter goes back to the Service Commission to follow the law. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, I will now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that the notification of the President of the nomination by the Police Service Commission of Mr. Harold Phillip to the Office of Commissioner of Police be approved. Member for Shogunas West.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I can understand the Prime Minister's attempt to revise very recent history because he was not here in the House. And notwithstanding the fact that he may have read what transpired, I want to indicate, Madam Speaker, that this House convened in this special sitting when it was adjourned sine die on the last occasion is a result of the intervention of the opposition protecting the Constitution. The revisionist approach of the Prime Minister to follow the law, I will demonstrate, Madam Speaker, flies in the face of the facts of what transpired in the House on the last occasion. Madam Speaker, I agree with the Prime Minister that we took an oath. Section 57 of the the first schedule says, as a member of Parliament, you take an oath. And I want to read that into the record, because you see what transpired on the last occasion was really sleight of hand in attempting to deal with a notification. Sleight of hand, okay. Yeah, we could spell it. Madam Speaker, form of oath for a member of the House. I, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by whatever religious book or affirmation, in my case is the Bhagavad Gita, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter. Madam Speaker, so this oath tells us our duty. We have an anchored duty to protect the Constitution. And you know, Madam Speaker, the member for Diego Martin Northeast, the member for St. Anne's West, has, accustomed talking about those who are patriotic and those who are not. The principal duty of a parliamentarian is to protect the Constitution. And when members on that side listen to what the leader of government business had to say, and they stayed quiet, I call them now, Madam Speaker, plasticine patriots. Because they allow the Constitution to become malleable at the altar of political expediency. Madam Speaker, you have a situation where I want to perhaps refresh the Prime Minister's mind and read into the record what transpired from the unedited version of the Hansard of the 3rd of the 7th, 2018. Madam Speaker, and this is as the Honorable Leader of Government Business, my good friend, got up to adjourn the House. Madam Speaker, and this is what she said, and I quote, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before moving the adjournment of the House, I must advise on a matter which concerns the business of the House. I am informed by the clerk that a document has come to the Parliament regarding a notification for the appointment to the Office of Commissioner of Police. Madam Speaker, you will recall that in this very House, we have determined that the process of the Police Service Commission in this matter was lacking in transparency, and that one can come to no other conclusion that the Commission did a job which cannot be explained and which was wholly unreliable and appeared to be flawed. Consequently, Madam Speaker, any recommendations coming out of that flawed process cannot and will not be accepted. In these circumstances, Madam Speaker, as leader of the House, I have instructed the clerk that this matter...
Standing Order 53.
Members, let's please observe the standing orders, please. I hope I don't have to be rising too often during the sitting for that purpose. Standing orders 53, and I've upheld it for the members who've been speaking. Please carry on.
Madam Speaker, I want to repeat what I just said. In these circumstances, Madam Speaker, as leader of the House, I have instructed the clerk that this matter will not be proceeded with. And then there was death stomping on the side of the government. And then, so Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn, sine die. Then there was a role for the Speaker because, and this is what the Madam Speaker said, member for Karen East, member for Chaguanas West, I think your outburst is unparliamentary. All right? And I would just ask you to withdraw the term. And then I got up, Madam Speaker. This is part of the Hansard record. This matter that was raised is really a subversion of the Constitution. Madam Speaker then says, member for Chaguanas West, I have asked you to withdraw the outburst. If you do not wish to do so, I really cannot, but then I will exercise other powers. Mr. Singh, Madam Speaker, I feel very strongly about it, and I do not wish to withdraw. And the member then leaves the chamber. Madam Speaker, so when the Prime Minister comes here and says that they followed the law, nothing could be further than the truth. The House was informed that there is a notification. And the Prime Minister says only when the notification is on the order paper that it is properly before the House. But, Madam Speaker, the law is clear, as the Prime Minister says, because you see he's coming after the fact. And what is the law? The law is very clear. The conjoint effect of Section 123 and Legal Notice 215 of 2018 indicates that there is need for an affirmative resolution of the notification by the House of Representatives, and that the order of merit list is created, and that order of merit, there is each person in that order of merit list has to, by way of notification, through the conduit of the presidency, will come before this House. That did not take place. That did not take place at all. It is only...
Go Martin Northeast. Yes. I am being disturbed. Thank you. Member for Shorenas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hope I get injury time. Madam Speaker, so that what you have is that you have a revisionist approach by the Prime Minister. So that is what transpired. That is what transpired, and that is simply the government was not following the process. In the newspaper of Wednesday, 4th July, Madam Speaker, Daily Express of Wednesday, 4th July, government not going ahead with flawed process. But the law is clear. Whether you indicate that the process is flawed or not, you have to engage the procedure of the Parliament. And you could not usurp the power of the Parliament. Nobody. You see, Madam Speaker, when the Honourable Member for Aruka Maloney, Leader of Government Business, said that basically she had the power as the regulator of the business of the House, that she could decide what is on the order paper and what is not on the order paper. I said, but the Honourable Member is anointing herself with power, which she does not possess. That the Honourable Member had arrogated onto herself a power she did not possess as Leader of Government Business. Yes. And the standing order, Madam Speaker, is very clear. And in standing order, or in order 3, in definition, it says, the Leader of the House means the Minister who is primarily responsible to the Prime Minister for the arrangement of government business in the House. So, when the Prime Minister comes today, was he a party to the decision to just say you have received some notification? And you know what was interesting about that? You had to pay attention because there was no way the name of Harold Philip was mentioned in the utterances of the Honourable Member. Nowhere. So if you weren't paying attention, you would never know that this was a new notification, that there's somebody coming before the House, and that it was not mentioned at all. So that was a kind of surreptitious approach to the notification, and the law is clear. Section 123, the relevant section in the legal notice, 215 of 2018, points that there is a process. That the process is from the Police Service Commission, the presidency, and the conduit to the Parliament. And nobody can usurp the role of the Parliament. So, Madam Speaker, this is what the Honourable Member is reported as saying to the press, a column by Ria Tate, government not going ahead with flawed process. Madam Speaker, government not going ahead with flawed process. And you see, because this refutes what the Prime Minister is saying, that you could end up rejecting Harold Phillips, but you have to go through the process of rejecting Harold Phillips. You cannot reject Harold Phillips ab initio unless you engage the process. And this is what in the face of the opposition insistence that there was a subversion of the Constitution, this is what the honorable member is reported as saying. She said the president sent a notification, but it was dependent on the leader of the House to bring that notification to the attention of the Parliament. Robinson Regis, honorable member, but I'm reporting as is indicated here, later reminded the Express that Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley had stated during the debate on the Special Select Committee report that government believed that the PSC process was unreliable and it would not be proceeding with any notification coming out of the process. She said that there was nothing stopping the opposition, if they wished to debate this notification, from moving a motion to debate the notification, but the government is adamant that the process was flawed. Any motion would have to receive the support of the majority of members of the House and so on. Madam Speaker, so the President sends a notification which enters the portals of this Parliament, and for the Parliament to do its work, and the leader of government business, constipates the process. Constipates the process because the process has a flaw. And that therefore, they put in a block in the process. And that we regarded as a breach of the Constitution, as it is against the law of the land, and government must be in accordance with the rule of law. Otherwise, anarchy will prevail. So this is what. So it is clear then. What the Prime Minister said is not in consonance with what the leader of government business said. There are inconsistencies, Madam Speaker. So they're not going ahead with the flawed process. And then, of course, Madam Speaker, the Constitution says that it is the supreme law of the land. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And any attempt, therefore, to breach that Constitution is, of course, against the rule of law and against what the government says through the Prime Minister. The honourable member also indicated in that excerpt, Madam Speaker, that the opposition can bring any motion to debate. But this was an affirmative resolution. The affirmative resolution provides no room for the opposition to bring any motion. It is by way of negative resolution. And that therefore it demonstrates once more the gross incompetence of the government in this matter, Madam Speaker. Rule of law. The rule of law really is what creates respect for government, which defines the approach that has to be taken in governance, and it is the rule of law which guides all of us. What you had on that last occasion on July the 3rd was an abandonment of the rule of law. And that does not augur well for the governance. The Prime Minister tried to retrieve the situation today by taking an approach that the Prime Minister said that this is the law, this is the Constitution, and we agree with him. But that is not what was said then. Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, again, I know it's recess, but remember we are back here to do the business of the people. And I ask for everybody's cooperation. Let's get this done. Everybody who wishes to speak will be allowed the opportunity to speak in the proper manner. I now recognize the member for Shogunas West.
Madam Speaker, it appears to me that the gravitas of this matter that is associated with the appointment of a commissioner is really moving away from and into the realm of he said, they say, them say, as the Prime Minister indicated, he was not a part of the law that was changed in 2006. Mr. Manning, as he then was Prime Minister, indicated that that 2006 amendment arose out of a consultative process. It arose out of the consultative process. And this is what Mr. Manning said. You see, Madam Speaker, it is at that very basis, you go back to the foundation of how this law came about, the funds at Origo. And this is what Mr. Manning said at page 8 of the Hansard. And Mr. Manning went on to outline the process and so on. And he said, secondly, the way the Commissioner of Police is appointed, that is another change that is of significance. Hitherto, the Police Service Commission made an appointment of a Commissioner of Police, but the Prime Minister had a veto on it. In other words, the Prime Minister could not propose a Commissioner of Police, but if after the Police Service Commission goes through the appropriate procedures as established by law, the Prime Minister is then consulted, and the Prime Minister has a veto. He can say yea or nay. If he says no objection, it goes through. But if he objects, then, of course, they will have to do something else. This is a process that not only involves the appointment of the Commissioner of Police. Every department head in the public service is subject to that prime ministerial veto, and there's much to be said for it. What the legislation now before the House proposes is that the prime ministerial veto disappears, but that the name as identified by the Police Service Commission will itself come before the Parliament and also will be the subject of affirmative resolution. The difference between this one and the appointment of members of the Commission is that the police officer who is going to be the Commissioner of Police will be, in fact, a public servant and has no way of defending himself. And then he compares it. But so Mr. Manning was very clear. He, together with Mr. Pandey, brought about this change. Now, it seems to me that the Prime Minister, in his ruminations, has a problem with this, the removal of that prime ministerial veto and the placement of that veto within the ambit and the embrace of the Parliament of the country. But that is the law, and he acknowledges that is the law. And that unless you change that law, then you have to live with the law. Because it appears to me, Madam Speaker, that the Honorable Prime Minister, when they gave that instructions to his members, and he galvanized his troops to vote against the process, which he indicated, and he is entitled to do so, to utilize that constitutional majority in the Parliament to, not the constitution, the simple majority in the Parliament to vote against the process. He's entitled to do that. But of course, it appears to me that in his judgment, he had not looked at the orbit of his decision. He did not see the issue from the eyes of others, and that therefore this chaotic and shambolic mess that we are in is a direct result of the Prime Minister of this country and the PNM government not thinking things through. Not thinking things through. Because now you have this scenario, and which is required of you going through every name, everyone on the order paper, everyone on the notification list, everyone on the merit list, they will now have to come before this Parliament. And nothing is wrong with that. That is the law. But the country, which has been ravaged and savaged by crime, will not have a substantive Commissioner of Police until this whole exercise is completed. In fact, the law provides for us for it to run for a year. That is the legal notice 2015 of 2018. I'm just guided, Madam Speaker, that on March 27, 2006, the then Member of Parliament for Diego Martin West voted for this piece of legislation that is before us. Voted for this piece of legislation on Monday, 27, 2006. So now to come and to say...
Standing Order 48-1, Madam Speaker.
Member for Shogunas West, please continue.
Madam Speaker. So that the reality then is that this is what was agreed upon and this is what they changed. So, Madam Speaker, what you have in a situation like this is that when we look at the newspaper reports over the last few days, you begin to understand the trauma being suffered by the country and what is taking place. On Thursday 5th, so after saying that the process is flawed and there will be no debate, tune change. Tune change. The road march now was, we will debate on Monday. We will debate on Monday. Daily Express, Thursday 5th July 2018. Government backtracks on top cop notification. Headline, we will debate on Monday. And this is a column by Ria Tate on page 4 of the Daily Express of Thursday 5th. And I quote, Madam Speaker, the government has egg on its face. It appears that it blundered when it announced that it was not proceeding with the parliamentary debate on the notification from the President that Harold Phillips' nomination for Commissioner of Police be approved. So you understand? So all this flies in the face of what the Prime Minister told us. Today, on Tuesday, however, Government Leader Camille Robinson Regis casually announced another notification had been received from Her Excellency. But because the process was flawed, that second notification would not be brought to the parliamentary floor. So debate off, debate on. Gross incompetence. Poor judgment. Madam Speaker, it is all, in fact, my colleague, the Honorable Member for Oropuch East, did not say it was one egg on their face. He said there was a crate of eggs on their face, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and the article goes on to state that yesterday, however, the government backtracked, stating that notification would be debated on Monday after all. Singh said yesterday he was clearly vindicated. Whilst I don't intend to bring you into the debate, Madam Speaker, what I said was that there was an attempt to give me a red card when the foul was committed by the government. Madam Speaker, it brought to mind a phrase in Macbeth. Fair is foul, and foul is fair, as they hover through the fog and filthy air. Madam Speaker, so that it is clear that the House leader owes us an apology. She owes us the Honourable Member owes us an apology for the manner in which she conducted the business of this notification. So with going further, Madam Speaker, in the newspaper of Thursday, 5th July, Express, by Ria Tate again, PSC head to the President on Commissioner of Police issue. We can't do over this election process. And I will read, Madam Speaker. Police Service Commission Chairman Bliss Sipasad has told President Paula May Weeks that it cannot redo the selection process for a Commissioner of Police. She also informed the President that the order of merit list candidates for the top position in the police service is still valid based on advice from Senior Counsel. In a letter to the President dated July 1st, 2018, which accompanied the notification for the appointment of Harold Phillips as COP, Sipasad stated, "We simply do not have money, time, and other resources to allocate to conducting a completely new process." Madam Speaker, whether the government had allocated monies to the Police Service Commission, the Police Service Commission having established an order of merit, and there's a timeline in the law for that order of merit, it didn't matter. It didn't matter whether they had all the money in the world. They could not restart the process until the completion of the order of merit. So no utilitarian issue as to whether or not that you have money or you don't have money. The law is the law. The law is required to be followed because we are a country that abides by the rule of law, that abides by the Constitution. Madam Speaker, when you look at the whole question of how we had to fight to get this debate going, you understand the role of the government. Why didn't they not mention his name, Harold Phillip, in the utterances of the leader of government business? Why? Is it because there was something surreptitious? I don't think so. I think the honorable member I don't know the situational things that transpired. But if you look at the Express editorial of Friday, 6 July 2018, and you understand this sequence from the 3rd, this is the 6th of July, Madam Speaker, government's tangled web. And you remember the utterance of Walter Scott, Madam Speaker. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when it is our intention to deceive. The editorial goes on to say, Madam Speaker, like the never-ending story of the Galleon's Passage, the appointment of a commissioner of police has become a soap opera in the genre of farce. Just when you think it is about to end, up pops a new twist. The latest episode has not only left the government with a proverbial egg on its face, but the Speaker of the House as well. Leader of the government business, Camille Robinson Regis, has only deepened the farcical nature of the exercise in trying to convey the impression of government's magnanimity in not adding to the continuing disquiet regarding the process. The reason the government has abandoned its effort to block debate of second-round nominee, acting Deputy COP, Harold Phillip.
48-1, please.
Member Fisher Gonas West, I'll allow you a little more latitude, but I think you've sought to address and respond, but don't forget what we're here for. Okay, so I'm allowing you a little latitude, but I'll ask you to please, having made the point, I think you've made the point with respect to how we got here. And therefore, if you will go on to your next point.
Thank you. But even the editorial, thank you, Madam Speaker, even the editorial is indicated. Mrs. Robinson Regis should apologize to the House and provide a credible explanation for the government error. The editorial also goes on to say, Madam Speaker, that there are other institutional office holders who should do the same thing, but that is a matter for record and for the reading of those concerned. Madam Speaker, so this tangled web that we wove over that period. The Sunday Express, the Sunday Guardian, Madam Speaker, says, editorial, Guardian editorial of Sunday, 8 July 2018. Get us a commissioner of police. How could a country have such difficulty in selecting a leader for its crucial law enforcement arm? What does it say about the Republic that we have failed to pick a commissioner of police over several years? What does it say for our country that we have had an acting police commissioner and giving him a 10 days every 6 months? What does it say about the process conducted by the Police Service Commission? What does it say about the role that the Parliament must play in the final selection? What does it say about the function of the President in this process? What does it say about the public's expectation that they would have a leader of law enforcement? What does it say about the members of the police service who expected to have the respect of their leadership look on at the failure to confirm their leader? What does it ultimately say about successive governments' failure to settle this matter once and for all? What does it say about the country's ability to deal with a frightening rise in crime? Without clear answers, where does that leave us? We deserve better. So that's what I say, Madam Speaker. When the Prime Minister and his government took the decision to make a certain judgment, They orbited in a certain arena and they operated within a bubble and they did not understand the impact of that and what is happening in the country. So that they were utterly disconnected, utterly and totally disconnected. And the Prime Minister reverted and talked about the process again that came through the Special Select Committee about the fact that once they did not apply for that position, that they will not be countenanced at all. Then not understanding, appreciating the talent pool strategy, that the only thing separated the Commissioner of Police from the Deputy Commissioner of Police was a period of 5 years. All the duties were basically the same, Madam Speaker. So, this is what it is. This is what it is. So the Prime Minister who voted for the process talks about a convoluted process. And Prime Minister Manning, as he then was, God bless his soul, he indicated that, look, this was on a trial basis. We have had part of this legislation work smoothly. When we come here for the affirmative resolution for members of the Police Service Commission, that went smoothly. So the two new appointees, Blissy Prasad and Susan Craig, both came for affirmative resolution of the House. That worked smoothly. So the President did that after consultation with both the leader and leader of the opposition and the Prime Minister. So that affirmative resolution worked smoothly. But in this part of the process, they did not work. And the government used its majority, which is entitled to veto the process. The question is then, what is to be done? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Madam Speaker, before we deal with what is to be done, we must be very clear. Yes, Lenin, that is Lenin. In fact, Madam Speaker, you may recall when you had that little booklet, What is to be Done, and then an accompanying document, the Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto, those were regarded as subversive literature, and that you couldn't access them, and that you had to read them very, very clandestinely in order to deal with it. But those were the days of the Public Order Act and so on. So, Madam Speaker, the Endell Thomas matter, and Endell Thomas, the matter arose, and Lord Diplock pointed out, Madam Speaker, that under a party system of government, such as exists in Trinidad and Tobago, and was expected to exist after independence in other Commonwealth countries, whose constitutions follow the Westminster model, dismissal at pleasure would make it impossible to operate what in the United States at one time became known as the spoils system. Upon a change of government, and would even enable a government composed of leaders of the political party that happened to be in power to dismiss all members of the public service who are not members of the ruling party and prepare to treat the performance of their public duties as subordinate to the furtherance of the party's political aims. In the case of an armed police force with the potentiality of harassment that such a force possesses.
Honorable Member for Shoalhaven West, your original 30 minutes are now spent. You are in fact in your 15 minutes. So if you wish to use the balance of your time to continue. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I was indicating, that in the case of an armed police force with the potentiality of harassment that such a force possesses, the power of summary dismissal opens up the prospect of converting it into what in effect might function as a private army of the political party.
48-6.
Okay, so member, I'll allow you to continue, but just remember, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your generosity, Madam Speaker. What might, in effect, might function as a private army of the political party that had obtained the majority of the seats in the parliament at the last election. We in the Caribbean, Madam Speaker, we have had instances where prime ministers utilized the police force to make it a private army of the political party in power. in Grenada. In Grenada, the Mongoose Gang. In Haiti, the Duvalier, Tonton Macoute. In Guyana, Forbes Burnham and the brown shirts. So that therefore you have a situation that you have to insulate the police force from the politicization.
Madam Speaker, 53 again, please.
Member for Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West. Please. Member, please. Okay? As I said, it is recess. I know we may all be mentally there, but let's remember physically we're still in Parliament. Okay? Please. And I'm not going to stand again on Standing Order 53.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So that therefore, when the Prime Minister says that as Prime Minister, he has no say, there's good reason for the Prime Minister not having a say. Because the history has taught us that evil exists in the Caribbean. And that therefore that insulation that is necessary must take place. So that when the Prime Minister says that he has no say, and the Prime Minister says in his domestic ruminations, that is carried in newspaper, Madam Speaker, that he is being held accountable, but he has no say. There's good reason for that. There is good reason for that. And the Prime Minister also indicated when he went to London, Madam Speaker, that he was surprised and disappointed that none of the members of the diaspora...
Go back there.
All right.
Okay? I'm not going to let you go back there. I'm sure you appreciate that. Please, continue.
So, Madam Speaker, it is clear then, okay, fine, that the Prime Minister, in this setting, Madam Speaker, that he said his elected government has no say. So that is what the law says. You must have no say. That he said that Mr. Manning bargained away the veto, but that was a consultative process. And I want to remind him of what Mr. Manning said, that there was maturity across with the opposition and the government. This administration has sought to demonize the opposition when they require the embrace of the opposition to deal with this legislation. Madam Speaker, Michael Harris's column today, Unraveling the COP Web of Futility. In the debate, and I quote from him, Madam Speaker, the government faces several critical challenges to its credibility and its integrity, to its leadership capacity, and to its willingness to do what is right to save the country from disaster. The challenge to its credibility and integrity is very clear. It is inconceivable that the government can move now to accept the nomination of Mr. Philip as Commissioner of Police when that nomination is based on the very same process which it had described as flawed on the basis it supposedly had rejected the nomination of Devdutt Dulalchan. Madam Speaker, and it goes on to state further in the article, how much time I have again, Madam Speaker?
You just have about 50 minutes. 50 seconds. 50 seconds, I'm sorry.
Madam Speaker, what is to be done? It is clear that the Prime Minister has to take leadership and embrace the opposition with a view to changing the law. What are the options available to him? Go back to the Prime Ministerial veto, change the law with respect to that, and that he cannot do without, but he must do something. Crime is ravaging this country, and the Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security and his government appears to be totally inept and bereft of any credibility in dealing with rampant crime that is ravaging and savaging this country. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Member for Orokujis.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to join the debate on an unusual day for a special, I understand, a special sitting pursuant to Standing Order 14. Madam Speaker, coming after the member for Chaguanas West, it will be difficult because the member for Shogunas was quite rightly placed some of the key issues in proper perspective and was at pains to point out the stumbling and fumbling that resulted in us being called today. Madam Speaker, I want to begin by stating categorically that we are summoned today as a result of the collective incompetence of this government. And not surprisingly, some of our colleagues would have had other plans and other places to be because we were under the impression, Madam Speaker, that we did, for a short time there, embark upon a recess. There are some outstanding issues I would like to raise, Madam Speaker, concerning what we have before us today. Unless I am mistaken, Madam Speaker, this is the third occasion when a government of the People's National Movement would assemble to vote against the appointment of a Commissioner of Police. This is not the first, it is not the second, it is the third. Because on that fateful day, Madam Speaker, on the 6th of June 2018, there was a vote taken at some time, and that vote resulted in the government expressing their lack of approval for another Commissioner of Police.
48-1.
Remember, I'll give you a little leeway, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, we are here today because another notification found its way. And notwithstanding the statement from the member for Aruka Maloney and the member for Shogunas West raised that, he spoke on it, he quoted from the answer. Notwithstanding that position, the government was forced to retreat and assemble the Parliament today to consider this notification. What standing order?
Due to look at
I'm not giving
55(1)B, tedious repetition. We've heard this over and over.
Member for Urupuchis, as you said, it was ventilated and dealt with. So I expect that that's by introduction and you're going on to your new point.
Thank you very much for permitting me 10 words on an issue that was raised by the member for Shogunas West. My friends opposite are extremely jumpy. And I assure them this is not, we are here today to do the people's business in good faith. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister today raised a couple matters which I just want to touch. I just want to touch on those matters. You see, Madam Speaker, I just want to raise an issue before me which I believe needs some clarification concerning these notifications that are before us. As you recall, Madam Speaker, there's a notification before us today concerning the nomination for Commissioner of Police of one Mr. Harold Phillips, and there was a package of documents served on members of Parliament, and I'll be referring to some of the documents which have properly been served to me as a member of Parliament. But, Madam Speaker, on the order paper, on a supplemental order paper, Madam Speaker, some time ago, I believe it was on the 2nd of February, dated the 2nd of February, Madam Speaker, there was notification for appointment to the position of Commissioner of Police for one Mr. Deodat Dolarcha, and I say no more on that, in case they now jump up again. That has been dealt with and gone. But, Madam Speaker, there was also a notification for the appointment of 2 Deputy Commissioners of Police. I have noticed, Madam Speaker, and I just needed clarification from anyone who cared to clarify, that on that evening of the 6th, there was a vote against the Commissioner of Police, but there was no vote taken on the Deputy Commissioners, and one has been removed from the order paper. Is that true? And if that is so, what process, by what process, or how, when, and why was a name removed from the Deputy Commissioner of Police notification that was properly on the order paper? Because unless the House dispenses with the matter, a name cannot be removed, a notification cannot be removed. So, Madam Speaker, at this stage, what I'm saying is that must have been an oversight, it must have been a mistake of some kind, because a Deputy Commissioner of Police name cannot be removed without a vote. Madam Speaker, today the Prime Minister made an interesting point and in an otherwise short address belabored the point that we are here today because we brought about change that did not result in the view of the government, did not result in a progressive step forward in the view of the government. And Madam Speaker, I think that is an important statement. And I underline the point by saying that when a Prime Minister speaks, he or she is no ordinary speaker, because what really comes from them, one expects to be policy statements. One expects to be statements that represent the considered view of a government. This is why Prime Ministers often depend on a written text and don't jump up every minute and speak off the cuff and so on, because it is policy statements you are making. So when you talk about change was made, but it did not, this did not result in progress, it clearly suggests that there's a policy U-turn that the government may consider, policy U-turn. Madam Speaker, I am one of those persons who in May 2006, I believe it was May 27th, I registered a vote along with my colleague from Siparia, my colleague for Shogunas West. I don't know if anybody else, but the three of us joined the then government led by Mr. Manning to vote yes. And as the member for Shogunas West said before, the member for Diego Martin West, the member for Diego Martin Northeast, maybe one more, the member for Lavantil West, they also voted yes to that change. And today the Prime Minister comes years after now to say, well, I voted yes, but this thing didn't work. I don't think it's working. And what are we talking about when we talk about not working? You see, the Prime Minister is right. There was a time from Eric Williams come down when the Prime Minister would sit in his, and it was generally his until 2010.
As I said, I allowed the first two speakers some historical context and so on. I think the point about what existed before now and the whole story to now, I think that has been adequately stated and answered and developed. I really would like us now to concentrate on what is before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me leave the issue, because clearly I don't want to develop it, by saying that I do not support any attempt to go back to the future with that archaic approach. And I move. I support, Madam Speaker, let me get to the present. I support this process. So I'm not talking history now, I'm talking contemporary events. I support this process where Mr. Harold Phillips' curriculum vitae is before me and before us. And we can now ponder at this CV, we can discuss the nominee. Unlike the past, which I will not talk about, where no member of Parliament would have had this opportunity. And this, Madam Speaker, I believe is progressive, notwithstanding the fumbling and the bungling that we have met. Madam Speaker, a statement made by the Prime Minister concerning this current event we are in today left me troubled when the Prime Minister, speaking on behalf of the government, suggested in speaking that the Police Service Commission should go back and do over the process. And I heard that. And I was very concerned about how a government, an executive, or the head of government, could tell the Police Service Commission, look, we don't support this, we have found errors in your process. Whatever they are, I'm not going into that. There was another debate on that. And I was concerned that the Prime Minister of this country could take a position that we're not supporting this nominee because the process was flawed. Person apply for B and you gave them A. Go and do it over. But it cannot work that simple. I don't think it's that simple. And beyond that out came a letter, Madam Speaker, which was part of my package. So I'm properly going to quote now what is in the package there. And it is a letter that came to us from the Parliament as part of the package, dated July 1st, 2018, addressed to Her Excellency, of course, and the letter is signed by one Bliss C. Prasad. I suspect that is the same Bliss C. Prasad as the chairman of the Police Service Commission. That name came before this House to be a member as well. Madam Speaker, I was taken aback by this letter, and I just want to read extracts from the letter. And it says to Her Excellency, we have received confirmation that the nomination of Mr. Deodat Dolarchan was not approved by the House of Representatives. This is the letter I'm reading from. The motion made no mention of the process employed by the Police Service Commission Although the House of Representatives, the report of the Special Select Committee, and the minority report were all highly critical of aspects of the process. So the Police Service Commission, but I'm reading for you, San Fernando East. The Police Service Commission is saying that there was no mention of the process, presumably by Her Excellency, but the report of the Select Committee and the minority report are all highly critical of aspects of the process. Senior counsel has advised the Commission that the existing merit list is still valid and the process laid out in Legal Notice 218 of 2015, etc., dictates that we should submit the next highest ranking candidate ballot. Notwithstanding the above, two of the current Police Service Commission, I'm reading as I see it. Notwithstanding the above, two of the current Police Service Commission were not part of the entire process, having been appointed subsequent and so on. As such, we could not, as a responsible body, simply forward the next candidate's name without attempting to address some of the concerns raised concerning the process while being mindful of the following. And the Police Service Commission is telling Her Excellency, and for that matter, telling the Parliament and the country, because this comes to us, we are duty-bound to act in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Well, thank God for that. We needed to know that. The next point, the state of the economy. We simply do not have money, time, and other resources to allocate to conducting a completely new process. The head of government said we are not satisfied with this process, go and do it over again. The Police Service Commission chairperson is saying on behalf of the commissioners, we don't have money, time, and other resources. So just forget it. I think that's the effect of it. There might be a cruder way of saying it, but just forget it. The rising crime rate in the country, they are also considering this there. The unprecedented length of time, 6.5 years since we have had an appointed commissioner of police. The untenable situation where all the top positions in the police service are held by persons acting. This does not create atmosphere, and they comment on that, taking responsibility. 2 of the 4 persons in the most senior positions have been at one time or another rejected by the House of Representatives as suitable candidates for the top position. Now, I'll stop there, but I want to make some other observations. We are on, Madam Speaker, by virtue of this letter, we are on to a crisis. We are on to a stalemate. Where?
Standing Order 53. Please.
Member for Diego Martin, Northeast, I just invite you to take a little walk and come back, please. Yes, please.
But you're quarreling with the Speaker? Madam Speaker, Diego Martin, Northeast is troubling. Thank you very much. So, Madam Speaker, the Police Service Commission is telling the country that the head of government said, go and do it over again. We're not satisfied with this process. It's saying we have no money, we have no time, we have no resources. This economy bad. Look, everybody come, you reject them. So just take the next nominee. We are here today. The government has already indicated that they are not going to support this nominee. What happens next? Because the Police Service Commission, by the letter sent to us, is clear. We don't have money, time, and resources for you. So are we going to be coming back here in July, in August, in September to go through this fast, to go through this fiasco? This is a crisis that we are facing. And it requires now some type of approach and intervention. Leadership. It requires considered and mature leadership. This is a matter in which the government, the opposition, and might I add, without bringing into the debate, Her Excellency ought.
So what I want us to do is, I guess you, to me, going into the realm of some sort of conjecture, I want us to deal with what is before us. And I thought that's where you intimated that you were heading. So please get back there.
So, Madam Speaker, this requires mature leadership and a solution. Otherwise, we will be called here every 2 weeks to do the thing again and again.
So, we're not going into the realm of the future. Let's deal with what is before us, please.
Madam Speaker, I just put on record the nature of this letter. It is part of our package, and I think quite rightly, we are asked to reflect on it. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister made the point, and the Prime Minister made the point today, not yesterday or the day before, that, and I note the language too, that the real issue, the real issue was persons who apply for one job and got another job. That was the big issue. But Madam Speaker, we need to ask a question now. Is that the deal breaker? Is that consideration being extended to any other appointment, such as Deputy Commissioner of Police? Is that? And Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister, reflecting earlier, indicated that there was a lot of talk outside about the objectives of the government and whether the government have a horse in the race and that's all. I tell you, Madam Speaker, let me put it clear, categorical, in response to a statement made by the Prime Minister today, that the opposition has no candidate, has no interest in any candidate. In fact, Madam Speaker, many, if not all of us, do not even know these gentlemen in question. Right now, Madam Speaker.
Members, every member will have an opportunity to speak. It's a debate. Member for Puchis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the opposition has no candidate. We are concerned with a process. We are concerned with fairness. We are concerned with transparency and the rule of law. So it is not an interest in any person. And you could put that in the scrapbook too. Because you see, they spend millions of dollars to produce some comic book on the next side when people don't have water to drink in this country. Madam Speaker, let me move on to the candidate. Madam Speaker, we have had in the public domain discussions on the candidate. The candidate is certainly not a new name to all of us, because how it went down initially is that the candidate was also, Madam Speaker, shortlisted for another position of Deputy Commissioner of Police. And in the original notifications, this candidate, Mr. Harold Orlando Phillip, was shortlisted as a Deputy Commissioner of Police. Madam Speaker, we can have no difficulty with the qualifications. You have Bachelor of Law, Executive Master's Business Administration, Legal Education Certificate, Diploma in Security Administration, etc., and a career police officer, it appears, with extensive service at different ranks in the police service, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the only thing that was troubling about this candidate, and I'm on the candidate now, because we have had the opportunity of getting into detail, Madam Speaker. The troubling aspect of this candidate was a judgment in the High Court, I believe by Mr. Justice C. Prasad, was it? Yes. Yes. In which very serious conclusions were made concerning the integrity, credibility, and commitment to the rule of law by this candidate. Madam Speaker, on reading that, I was very, very concerned that the matter arose in that context. But Madam Speaker, we were told before that the Police Service Commission considered that. It was something before them. And their legal advice was that notwithstanding the judgment, it cannot or ought not to debar the candidate. That was the legal advice that we got on this very candidate before us. Now, Madam Speaker, you will permit me to express my very deep concern with this, because this is not a case where, is Movelang and is old talk and you hear by the bar something about a police officer and so on. This is not that case. This is a case where a High Court judge have found, damning conclusions about character and integrity and credibility. And Police Service Commission reflected on it. But their advice was that the Police Service Commission can consider those circumstances, but they cannot debar the candidate. It was so in another case of another candidate as well. Madam Speaker, we were very concerned with that one, and it was raised. The matter now is because, and Madam Speaker, these matters are all interlinked. That is why one has to take off from another. Because of an earlier refusal to support a notification, we have this notification before us. This didn't come just so. This came because something was rejected before. And having rejected that before, and given the process, that is the concern of the government says today that they are prepared to vote against this nomination as well. But Madam Speaker, the member for Chaguanas was ended his contribution by again putting the context for this. The context for this debate is not the CV, it is not the diploma at the United States New Mexico Military Institute. That's not the context. It is not the LEC that the person have. It is that what is required now is some type of focus and some type of stability to the police service by virtue of solidifying leadership. And Madam Speaker, I have very briefly to refer to the letter again that is part of our package of the Police Service Commission. And they have indicated that they have sought legal advice and so on, and they are using another process. You see, I want to get to this thing process because we throw out the first nomination on the basis of process. And today, this Police Service Commission has indicated in a letter, Madam Speaker, that they use a process too. And I am reading about the median and the mean and the standard deviation. The last time I heard of that was Form 5 maths, Madam Speaker. They have used all of these methodologies. A statistician in the employ of the Commission undertook a statistical analysis of the available data using standard deviation from the mean to normalize the score. And this normalization procedure provided some assistance. And based upon that, they admit they have no documentary evidence of the process. We are obliged to accept the verbal explanations by the commissioners. They say given the small number of individuals that remain in consideration, 2 of the individuals on the initial list were over 60. 1 other candidate had disciplinary convictions lodged. I'm very concerned with this, and this is part of a letter that I got. It is stated here that 1 other candidate had disciplinary convictions lodged against him. Who is that candidate? Madam Speaker, I am entitled to raise this because this is the material that was sent to me to debate today. Who is that? To my knowledge, and I was probably more involved than all members because of virtue of another body we established, I can't recall any candidate having disciplinary convictions lodged against him. I could be wrong, so I just raised that matter. 2 other candidates were deemed to have lacked the necessary experience necessary for the position of COP. The remaining candidates were ranked by each of the 4 commissioners according to their preference for best candidate for the position of COP. The resulting scores were total and the merit list established. Madam Speaker, they clearly have embarked upon a process of their own, and they have come up with this. And in the standoff that exists now, and in the crisis that we have created, and Madam Speaker, it is not my intention at all to talk about the rampant murder rate in this country. But in the crisis that we have created here, by our own doing, by the doing of the government, they have created a crisis. And in this crisis, we do not know when this story will end. We don't know. We don't know. In fact, this bungling is worthy to be in their scrapbook, Madam Speaker. It's worthy to be in their scrapbook. And, Madam Speaker, I have my own views, which I will share very briefly on this matter. That it is either I don't know how, because you see, we're in a more difficult position than we were in before. You see, there was a time when nothing was being done, or something was being done, a process, and it was taking years, or nothing was being done, and you had an acting commissioner. This is a case now where the Police Service Commission is saying they have legal advice. to bother the House of Representatives every month. That is what the Police Service Commission, knowing that you don't want anybody because you believe that process is unfair, Madam Speaker. Knowing that. And the process is flawed. So, how and when will we resolve this position of a Commissioner of Police duly appointed? And Mr. Harold Phillips, today, and I just want to make this point, Madam Speaker, the House of Representatives' rejection of a candidate is something that we should not dismiss easily. Madam Speaker, people spend their life in a career. When they join a service, whether it's the military, the police, the civil service, and so on, they all properly aspire to ambitions that one day they will become the permanent secretary, they might become the chief of defense staff, they might become commissioner of police. This is normal that they will aspire to the highest office within the profession that they so choose. And Madam Speaker, this is a good thing. And now to put on people's record that they were a candidate for a particular job of commissioner of police and rejected by the House of Representatives. They end their career with that stain that they were rejected. Because in this matter, unlike 2008, Madam Speaker, I'm talking about the present and not the past. I'm speaking at present. Nobody, the Prime Minister or no member of government is saying that these persons are not qualified. They are not saying that the person lack experience. They were not in the police service, or we believe that they're unsuitable, unfit for office. So persons have now been repeatedly rejected for this position. They carry that on their career as a blemish of sort, and they are not being told, they are being told that it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the process that you participated in. And you are a victim of that. So Mr. Phillip today is a victim of the process. And Madam Speaker, I believe that this is unfair, that public officers who dedicated their life to this country must face this indignity of being rejected by the House of Representatives in this manner. And Madam Speaker, I know I don't want to go back in history because they are tempting me to, but the matter with Mr. Parker was raised by the Prime Minister. And in just 30 seconds or so, or less, I would indicate that the records show, and we can quote from the passage and so on, the records show at that time that there was a conflict of interest situation involving Mr. Parker and the institute that was given the job to recruit.
And he's a Canadian.
Yeah, and Mr. Parker, incidentally, was a Canadian citizen. And so, Madam Speaker, the issue of Mr. Parker that the Prime Minister raised, there was a conflict of interest matter involved in that. And the government of the day chose not to approve that. But then quickly approved two other citizens of Canada, I believe it was, and proceeded with that, and then solidified the approach. Madam Speaker, today the population was hoping that the government would have come with a flight plan. Not just to say no to this person or any person so nominated, but a flight plan. What are we going to do about it? And we were hoping that the government would indicate that we have already asked the Attorney General to review the order again, to close the loopholes, because in the Select Committee report there was a recommendation about the law, reforming the law. So we were hoping that the government would tell us today that the Attorney General is working assiduously to review the order, to close the loopholes, to tighten it, ensure that it abides by the rule of law, but in quick succession we can put something in place to arrive at a commissioner. We got no such indication. No such indication. So that the population don't know the thinking on this matter. All we know is that we come here and reject, so it is just reject after reject after reject everybody. It doesn't matter at this stage. And the population would have also been interested in knowing whether some type of consultative
Honourable Member
process...
for Oakwood East, your original 30 minutes are now spent. You're entitled to 15 more minutes if you wish. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And the population would have been hoping that some type of consultative mechanism would be put in place between the arms of the state to address this matter as a matter of urgency. And I call upon the government to embark on a process of consultation with the opposition and other stakeholders on this matter. It's a crisis that will not go away, Madam Speaker. It will not go away. It is a recurring crisis that we face in this country today. And this is not a debate on crime, as you would point out to me. So I'm not going to talk about the, what is it, the blood walk or the boardwalk?
We're not going to talk about
Well,
it.
Madam
So
Speaker, I
please.
pass that. So, Madam Speaker, I will summarize and in a couple of minutes, but to say that it is a dangerous thought that is being harbored opposite of going back in time. Today, all examples of transparency and openness across the developed world in particular would show that this approach of parliamentary oversight, accountability, is a preferred approach in the selection of individuals of high public office. And I would ask the government to rethink their position. It is not a perfect system at all. It is not perfect. It is not perfect. But it is not bad. And it is much better than when we had Eric Williams and Tony May, or Lance Selman and so on. It is much better than that. In fact, the government can even look at the congressional model, where persons actually come before.
Excuse me. The member whose device is disturbing, could they kindly just leave, attend to the device and return? Please. Continue, member for Urupuchi.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have examples in the world where persons who are being considered for appointment, apart from talking on the floor and reflecting on their CV and so on, they actually appear before a congressional committee or a special committee of the House to be interviewed, to be examined. And if Mr. Phillip came before me, I would certainly ask Mr. Phillip, in reflecting on him, Madam Speaker, about that matter of the High Court judgment. We will not have an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to do that in our system, but to reflect on that. Madam Speaker, a lot has been made about this application, and believe it or not, the application was also sent to us as part of our package, Madam Speaker. It was also sent to us as part of our package. And it's an interesting point on the application I just want to reflect on, because that becomes a big issue for the government today. For Mr. Phillips in particular, and we are reflecting on him, he had applied for Commissioner of Police. Deputy Commissioner of Police, not Commissioner of Police. But there was also another box here. There was also another box here for both. And unless I'm mistaken, we had 21 candidates or so who had applied for both positions. What would be the position of the government had Mr. Phillips or another nominee to come down the road? I'm not anticipating. If someone came and they applied for both, so what would be the crisis we face then? Because if you are saying that the bugbear here, the breaking point, the deal breaker, was that someone applied for B and you give them A, what about if there are 21 applied for A and B? Would that argument still hold? Would you say, okay, we can put the person now because they apply? Because I think it is simplistic, utterly simplistic, to lodge an argument in such a critical matter on the issue of you applied for B and not A, when the people were at pains to point out that they use a talent pool strategy. They were at pains to point that out. And to hook an argument on that one point is simplistic to say the least. And this is why there may be people in the national community who believe there's more in the mortar. And I saw a minister with the pestle this morning. Madam Speaker, the government has a duty today to indicate to the population and all of those persons who the member for Chaguanas West quoted from, all of them, to indicate what is the position of the government as it relates to ending this fiasco. Because it will, you see, I keep saying that had you done nothing, it may have brought more stability. This is destabilizing a critical institution. In fact, strange enough, by doing nothing, you could have brought stability. But you are destabilizing this now. And I am not even going to talk about court action and so on that people may contemplate. That's a completely different ballgame. But unless and until the government wake up to this crisis, ongoing as it will be, and put in place some type of new system, legal and policy, to end this. Because the Prime Minister made the point. I think the Prime Minister made the point too. And I had a note of it here. The cost, I have calculated, Madam Speaker, that it cost this country since 2008 in the vicinity of $10 million not to appoint a commissioner of police by all those different institutions. It cost them it cost the taxpayer $10 million. And in this one, I believe it was $3.1 or $3.2 million spent on this last occasion. And if this continues, you can expend a lot of money with absolutely no end in sight. Because it cannot be that you return to the House of Representatives, one time you quarrel that the person wasn't suitable, the next time the process wasn't suitable, and you just continue and continue. The opposition has taken the position, Madam Speaker, that, and I don't want to revive any debate, that whereas processes were followed, they were all explained, we may have had our difficulty with certain techniques used and so on, but they were not fatal to the process. However, the government took the position of an opposite position, and therefore in rejecting the first nominee, they now have to reject the second nominee, and they have to reject the third, and the fourth, and the fifth in this process. It will not bring any stability, Madam Speaker. And quickly, to resolve it, is to put in place a new mechanism born out of consultation. Madam Speaker, I would just want to end by saying that there was something of a vision of former Prime Minister Patrick Manning when he met members of the opposition to put this in place. And he knew exactly what he was doing. And the opposition supported that because we saw transparency. We saw fairness of some kind. We saw the rule of law. And today, we have little transparency with these type of rejections, questionable commitment to the rule of law, and, Madam Speaker, certainly not value for money when we squander money in this way. Because now that you reject everything left, right, and center, the money wasted, the money gone. You can't get it back, Madam Speaker. And in those circumstances, Madam Speaker, the government has presided over this. We will leave them now to play in the mud that they created out of this mess. Thank you.
Member for Baratarisano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for allowing me to enter this debate. I won't be very long. But while reading this motion, it shows that whereas Section 123.3 of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Chapter 101, the Act, provides that the Police Service Commission shall submit to the President a list of the names of the persons nominated for appointment to the office of Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner of Police. And whereas Section 123.4 of the Act provides that the President shall issue a notification in respect of each person nominated under subsection 3, and the notification shall be subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives. This, Madam Speaker, clearly delineates exactly what was supposed to occur. It does. The Police Service Commission submits the names to the President, which they think are appropriate. The President submits the names to the Parliament based on the Constitution, and the Parliament determines yes or no affirmative resolution, yes or no of the names. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this process has been going on for quite a long time. You see, Madam Speaker, when you're a member of the House, such I have been from 95 to now, I have seen it occur on different sides of this process. When it occurred, I was here, when Prime Minister Manning before, and the basket of legislation, etc., and what occurred. It's all in the history, Madam Speaker. And the Prime Minister was correct in bringing it up. What he said there was correct. Everything he said was correct because I was there also together with him. However, when you move into a future and you move into systems, sometimes the systems could be correct, sometimes they could be flawed. Sometimes they could be good, sometimes they may be not so good. And sometimes when we create law, Madam Speaker, we create law with the best interest at that time. And I want to make a mention to two laws that I've been looking at for the last couple months, thinking about when I saw the anti-terrorism bill, etc. I don't want to go there. No, I just want to...
I don't want to cut you too early, but, I want you to relate all that you're going to say to what is before us. So I'm not going to let you go to other laws. I hear you about intent and so on, and maybe you could relate that point to what we're debating before us. Okay, and keep it to that. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. But I want to just mention, I'm not looking at your decisions, but sometimes this is a parliament and we have to parley and speak. And sometimes it's not a court of law where you bring files up front and then you come afterwards with, and then you can't bring back the files and you're done. We have a different kind of system, and I'm just trying to give a link. So when you look at a law and you say this is a good law at the time, can I bring in the Jim Crow laws of the United States of America? They were laws, legislation. Can I bring in the apartheid laws of South Africa? They were laws. And if we said this is the law and this is how we have to go, always remember the Jim Crow laws of the United States caused people of the Afro-Americans to be denied voting rights. And the apartheid laws of South Africa created laws that denied people their own right and jailed Nelson Mandela. So I'm saying to you, when you create laws at that time, maybe it was good for the people who created laws then. And maybe it was good for Mr. Manning and whoever it was then. Today is a different day, but the law stands. And until you bring a new law and a new constitution and constitutional reform, then we have to abide at what has occurred. And the member for Parliament for Chaguanas West and for Rupert West, made mention of the fact that the Police Service Commission is an independent body. It's not a creature of the government, the opposition. It's a creature of the Constitution, independent constitutional commission. And they went through the system. Were there any...
Madam Speaker, may I invite you to look at Standing Order 55-1B, please?
All right, so, Member for Barataria Sanwan, I'm going to give you a little leeway, but I want you to, after you've laid that foundation, so I'm giving you about two more minutes, if you could go into what your contribution and on a point that has not been dealt with.
Definitely. Maybe they don't want to hear the truth, Madam Speaker. Sad. No, not you.
No, but I've determined. Okay, so let's go on.
This is a creature of the Constitution. What was the criteria that the government told the Commission how to select a commissioner of police? Did they speak to the Commission, which they're not allowed to? What was the criteria used? What definition was it used? I'm trying to develop a point.
No, just a minute. What I'm saying is, we're not going back to process. We had a whole debate on process. Has been made already by Oropuch East. He's dealt with a process since June. So that if you're going to go to speak to that, I will allow what has come to us since June. But I really don't want us to go back and open up any debate. And you, in your experience, you said you've been here since 1995. In your various roles, I think you appreciate what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Well, could the leader of government business indicate what you would like me to speak about?
Member for Barataria Samuel, is it that you're finished?
No, I'm just asking.
Okay, all right, please continue.
For clarification.
Please continue.
Because I'm not too sure. Right now I'm at a loss what to speak about, or how to speak about it, or what. I'm not giving away, member. I'm completely at a loss. What I would like to do, Madam Speaker, is this, though. I want to apologize to the constituents of Barataria Sanwan as I stand here. Yeah, I will. For putting them into this facade that the government cannot have an elected commissioner of police to protect them, Madam Speaker. And I'm very sorry for the people of Trinidad and Tobago that the government has bungled this rather than taking what the Police Service Commissioner has said. They have bungled the thing, and by doing it, they have opened themselves to all the lawsuits. That's what they have done. You have opened yourself to all the lawsuits that will come. You have created no change, no differences. You rejected what came from the Police Service Commission. That came up as a result of a merit list or whatever it may be, or talent pool, together with the different statistical analyses. Everything. You rejected that. When it comes here, the Prime Minister comes here and says, I don't want to open this thing to litigation. But by your very actions, you have done that. So we could sit here, Madam Speaker, every 2 weeks and continue this process, because once you rejected one on process, the process hasn't changed. You send it back to the Police Service Commission. The process will be the same process that they use. They'll come up with the same names if they were correct in the first assumption. And you cannot be telling the Police Service Commission, change your method, because that's what they have. So what do you have to do, Madam Speaker? And the former Prime Minister, Bastille Pandey, has always said, we need in this country constitutional reform. And this is a classical example of constitutional reform. So I'm trying to indicate, Madam Speaker, as a senior member of the House, together with my colleague from Diego Martin West, that we have been speaking constitutional reform. We have been asking for constitutional reform. It's a classical example of it. Our constitution is not working. So let us sit together and deal with the Constitution and come up with a process, Madam Speaker. That's all I have to say.
Member for Caroni Central.
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I will not be very long, but I do want to make a few points. I think it would have been better for all of us, since the Honorable Prime Minister got up to lead this debate, if he had come to the Parliament and said to us, look, we made a blunder. We made a mistake. We should not have done what we did last time. We tried to avoid a debate on this matter, as we did with the matter of Mr. Dulalchon, when that matter was dispensed with in the Parliament without the presence of the opposition. And in that situation, I think the country would have felt, well, okay, at least the Honorable Prime Minister is speaking the truth. And we on this side would have felt that, okay, the government made a mistake, but they've come, they've admitted it, and we are prepared to acknowledge that. No big thing. But instead, the Prime Minister got up to say that we didn't even know why we were here in Parliament. But they hardly knew what they were coming to Parliament to do. And the member for Chaguanas West, in outlining the history of this thing, the whole evolution to this point, made it very clear that the government was very uncertain, they were very unsure as to how they were going to proceed. I think we can conclude, after all is said and done, that first of all, I think the reason, I'm not sure about the reasons why they did not want a debate. They had raised the issue of the process in the earlier debate as we discussed the report of the Joint Select Committee. And perhaps they wanted to avoid a debate in order to get out of any kind of political wranglings about the individual personalities involved. But we are responsible opposition. We will not do in this Parliament what was done outside in the pages of the newspapers with people. And we would not, in fact, use the opportunity here, notwithstanding evidence that is available, to defame anybody who cannot come to the Parliament and represent themselves. But they made a blunder. They did not think things through. the member for Chaguanas West said that. And on many occasions, when we've come here, especially for policy-related issues, I've argued the case that the government is very weak on thinking the issues through to conclusion and impact, and that is why they get into such difficulty. So, the first thing, they did not want a debate. Secondly, they may have had good reason for the debate, which is really not a cause for worry in a situation in which you have a responsible opposition. And thirdly, ultimately, they get catch and they try to rationalize the whole process. And I don't think that it is helpful for the government to do that. I mean, the whole country knows what the reality is. We certainly know in the opposition what the reality is. And you're not going to fool us by rationalizing and rewriting the history of the event. And you're not going to fool the population by rationalizing and rewriting the events. But these are important issues that were at stake. The member for Chaguanas West raised many of those issues. And I won't go into that, except that on one occasion here, the Prime Minister mentioned that sometimes when I speak to esoteric issues. And for the general population, esoteric issues means that you raise issues that are important only to a few people, not large numbers of people. In other words, the issues that I raise, the country is not concerned about. Only a few people, perhaps with intellectual interest, because he said esoteric intellectual, have an interest in that. But I want to say the vast majority of people in this country are very interested in the Constitution. The vast majority in this country are interested on the role of the presidency, for instance, and the relationship between the presidency and the executive. The vast majority of citizens in this country, if not all, are interested in the parliament and how the executive accounts to that. They are interested in democracy. They are interested in how the Constitution works and why it is important to honor the Constitution or follow the law and not violate the law or violate the Constitution. These are very important things to the population. This is a country that has always chosen the constitutional path, Madam Speaker, and it is important to recognize that. I was very, very surprised when in a debate in this House, the member for Point Fortin talked about the role that he played at a certain time in the history of this country.
I think I've given you a lot of latitude where you've set your context. And therefore, I am not going to permit you to go back to some other debate. I think you've set the context and you may be well positioned to jump off from there to what is before us. And I'd appreciate if you consider that path forward, please.
I will abide by the ruling, Madam Speaker. But I will emphasize that the Constitution and the law are very, very important to people, and the functioning of the institutions, whether it's police commission, service commission, presidency, parliament, the executive, democracy, all of these things are very, very serious to the ordinary person, and it takes certain things to sort of trigger them. And the issue has arisen, since we are here, of the qualifications of the person and the CV of the person, and the person that we are debating with the notification to affirm, and of course with the choice, the democratic choice, as the Prime Minister pointed out, to affirm or not to affirm, to support or not to support. But in looking at the CV here, and I am not doing it in relation to this CV alone, I'm raising a point about a point of the the appointment of the commissioner. When you look at the resume of this person, one thing I find missing in this resume, and perhaps in all that came up, is the ultimate job of the Commissioner of Police, which is really to keep crime under control, to maintain the peace and good order, and to keep the society safe. It seems to me that that is the job of the Commissioner of Police, and that is the rubric for having a government that is accountable for good governance. And if these things are not required as part of the specifications, as part of what we expect as a parliament, of what the country is demanding from a commissioner of police, I think we are always going to end up in difficulty. Because the amount of qualifications a person has, the amount of administrative responsibilities they have undertaken, the amount of projects that they have managed, it really does not matter. What really matters is whether you can maintain the peace, keep good order, and keep crime under control. And there are certain things that are required of that with all the men that you have, men and women that you have in the police service. And I would say that since there has been a call here by the opposition, by all the members who have spoken, that we re-engage this process and address the question of how we might quickly get a commissioner of police, because right now the crime is raging, but we do not have a situation where we are going to see the end of this process very soon. Since that has been the cry of the opposition to let's put this matter to bed, and it is the initiative required of the government to engage the opposition to do this, perhaps when we do this, we can address the real issue of why we need a commissioner of police and what kind of police we need. And if we do not address that, I don't see how we're going to address the larger problems in the society and the larger problems in national security in Trinidad and Tobago. Because at the end of the day, it is about results. And the question is, how do you achieve results, and what kind of person do you need to achieve results? And what does that then require of what the police commissioner is required to do? So, as I said, I will not be very long in this matter. I think that the government has really found themselves in a box. They've come here today and they had, what options did they have really? They could support, which would be hard to do because they said that the entire process was flawed. They could not support, as they have pledged to do, in order to be consistent, or they could abstain, which would make no sense for the government because they are in the lead, and this matter is brought here, and they have the majority. So in that kind of situation, they really boxed themselves in by the way they proceeded. And the way they boxed themselves in beginning, it really had to do with the fact of how in the parliament they created the conditions when we walked out of the parliament, and then they proceeded to pass several bills. That is part of the history.
Member, while I understand the history, because I'm certain I was here, I am not allowing us to go back to another debate. Please continue.
Had the decision not been taken then, Madam Speaker, to address the issue of Mr. Dulalchon, this matter may not have come up here today. And it certainly would not have come up in the same way. But that is what they chose, and this is the end result of that. We on the opposition are happy that we had an opportunity to debate, that the constitutional path was followed, that the law was followed as well, and that more than that, we had an opportunity to air this matter publicly as we are supposed to do under the Constitution and the law of Trinidad and Tobago. And having said that, our position is very clear on this matter, and more than that, we ask the government on other occasions to simply come to the Parliament and come clean with the issue. We have a responsible opposition, and we will play a reasonable role. And on the matter of how you change things in order to make a commissioner, to put a commissioner in place in reasonable time, the opposition has indicated by every speaker that we are open to discussion and reasonableness in solving a problem for Trinidad and Tobago, which needs to be solved.
Member for Tabakhi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have spent a large amount of parliamentary time in discussing this matter, not only on this occasion, but on several previous occasions. I want to congratulate my colleagues who have spoken here on the floor, on this side, for bringing the issue to the fore and for demonstrating to the government and the public at large that we are prepared to engage in conversations, when we are prepared to engage in discussions that can result in as quick a time as possible for the selection of a Commissioner of Police. Because, Madam Speaker, while this debate goes on in Parliament, the country continues to be under siege. And the only thing that is king in the country at this time is crime. This discussion on process, as important as it is, and as much as it has been used to say that the particular nominees no longer qualify, this discussion, let us all admit on both sides, is hurting the people of this country, our people. Every person in this country is hurting. And when people are not seeing any end to this in terms of how a commissioner is to be appointed, Madam Speaker, frustration will continue to grow in the country, and eventually people fight or they take flight. And we are reaching on the borders of fight or flight in this country because of the frustration that is setting in the country. Madam Speaker, while we are debating the process, and through the debate on a flawed process, so-called flawed process, we are eliminating those on the merit list. The debate in the public is a different debate. The people are debating the failure of the government who are in charge to deal as expeditiously as possible with the appointment of a commissioner. If this means that you approach the opposition and say, let us sit together and develop a process that will bring this sad situation to an end, I think this is deserving of attention. Madam Speaker, I used to be for 35 years of my life a leadership and management consultant. And I am personally appalled that it cost $3.1 million, and at the end of that, to hear of a flawed process, to engage a so-called firm, KPMG as it is, in order to do what? To write a job description, to have people interviewed, and to use some method to come up with, say, this is the merit list. 3.1 million.
Speaker, standing order 48-1, please.
Okay, so member for Tabakhi, as I said, in terms of what we're dealing is this particular notification. The process in terms of what has happened before engage an entire debate in this session, so I can't allow it. So please, if you can move on to what is before us. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, what we as parliamentarians have had before us is a motion. And all we have before us to determine whether a person is eligible or not eligible, qualified or not qualified, was the CVs that were in front of us. But there was no way in which, as a parliamentarian, except based on the CV, to judge whether there is a relationship between the kind of performance required as a commissioner of police and what is there on the CV. A CV does not necessarily mean performance. And we can write all kinds of CVs, but it does not necessarily mean performance, Madam Speaker. And I think it's very important. If we talk about a flawed process, then let us talk about what we parliamentarians are using in order to come up with a decision. In my respectful view, I think that in the whole process, what should have been paramount in the minds of KPMG and the Police Service Commission is what is right in terms of the kind of leadership that the police service requires at this point in time. Madam Speaker, you can talk about strategic leadership, you can talk about policy-oriented leadership.
Madam Speaker, Standing Order 48.1 and 55.1b. That has already been done by oral proceedings.
Okay, so again, Tabakit, I uphold and I remind you, Honorable Member for Tabakit, we're not looking at KPMG and the process. I also think the member for Caroni Central touched on the point of, and he put it in a different way, but it's basically the same thing, in that what we're asking for a police commissioner is not necessarily academic credentials, but other things. So I think that those points have been exhausted, and I'd ask you to go on to the other point that you have to make, and please relate it to what is before us. Thank you.
The point I want to make, and I'll end on this, is that this country needs an operational type of person in order to deal with the crime situation. And the candidates presented so far, from the CVs I have read, and the public knowledge of their performance does not meet the operational style required in order to deal with that situation which puts our citizens under siege. Thank you, Madam.
Member for Diego Martin West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my apologies for my late arrival. I was expecting that all members were positioned to have their say. So I was taken a little bit by surprise that I had to stand up now. Madam Speaker, I heard a lot today about Patrick Manning. And I too want to add my piece about Patrick Manning. Because if one followed what was said here today, his famous statement that they have to say something would have been demonstrated here today. We said that there's a motion before us, and I was painfully short, I probably think, given what has been said, in trying to keep to the matter in front of us. But my colleagues had to say something, and they said a lot. And now I am forced now to have to respond to a lot of what they said so that the parliamentary record can reflect fact from fiction. Madam Speaker, a lot was said about an apology from the leader of government business. And my colleague from Caroni Central, from Tuwari, said that the government did not want a debate. And my colleagues want to congratulate themselves. That's okay. They want to take credit for something. That's okay. But what are the facts? Madam Speaker, for the record, the facts are that on Monday, the leader of government business became aware that a correspondence had come to the House where a notification was made. That was Monday. The House was meeting on Monday. The Senate was due to meet on Thursday and Friday. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I started my presentation by saying I was not in the House, I was out of the country, I was in communication with the leader of government business. Monday afternoon, I think it was, that the notification came. Was it Tuesday? Tuesday, sorry, my apologies, Tuesday. Tuesday, the notification came. But the order paper that brought the House here on Tuesday did not have on it the notification. And I stand corrected on that. I stand to be corrected on that. That was my understanding. And I think that's the fact. I also knew that the Senate was meeting on Thursday with the possibility of the Senate meeting on Friday. Because in my discussions with the Attorney General, the Senate was to go to completion to pass what was before the Senate. So Thursday and Friday were reserved to complete that matter that was going to the Senate. The next parliamentary day after that, Madam Speaker, was Monday. Madam Speaker, sine die that my friend from Pointe-a-Pierre is holding on to. Sine die means any day. It doesn't exclude any day. And Madam Speaker, the House, Madam Speaker, please. Madam Speaker, under normal circumstances, we would have gone to recess on Friday. But the notification came, she became aware of it on Tuesday. Am I being advised that we should have gone to recess and leave it hanging? We chose not to do that. And we chose not to call the House on Friday with the expectation that that could have stymied the other place. And the business was concluded there. So if my colleagues on the other side want to take that to mean that we are bungling and that we are incompetent and that's why you're here, that is what you think. We don't think so. We are here because we wanted to be here. And I keep saying over and over in this country, there are people who don't know and always talk long on what they don't know. We knew why we were going to come here today on Monday because we didn't call it on Friday and we came the first opportunity after that. Correct. And you come here and waste people's time today, whole evening, talking about the government didn't want to debate. Madam Speaker, the other one, another colleague from somewhere. We are prepared to engage. I'm not even sure which of my colleagues said that, but one of them said that. We are prepared to engage in as quick a time as possible. And my question is, since when? Let me remind you, Madam Speaker, because I'm not reminding them. As Maurice Marshall would have said, stick break in the ears. Let me remind you, Madam Speaker. The last Commissioner of Police who held that job substantively here was Dr. Gibbs and his colleague Iwatsky. I think it was on the 1st of August 2012? 1st of August, looking at Book and Illustrated. 1st of August 2012, they were dismissed from office in midstream. They were dismissed from their position. They were paid millions of dollars and they left. I was in this house, Madam Speaker. And subsequent to that, on numerous occasions in this house and outside the house, I said to the government then, and to my colleagues, some of who are still here, come to the Parliament any Friday with a replacement for this conundrum, and you have the support of the opposition. The record will show that. They never did. In fact, they went on saying that it is better to have somebody acting. They will work harder to get a job. That was the Attorney General speaking for the government. And it wasn't that crime wasn't a problem then, you know. Because crime was such a problem then that they declared a state of emergency by accident.
Madam Speaker, 48-1, we dealing with the notification. Right.
Madam Speaker, I am responding to what they said to me.
Raise the state of emergency in our debate.
Okay, so Prime Minister, you may continue. Just remember, this is not a debate on crime.
Madam Speaker, with all due respect, I'm taking part in the debate and I will follow every instruction you give me. But as I preface and I present my thoughts, I will respond to what was put on the Hansard here today. Madam Speaker, they are now saying to us, and we are happy to hear it, that they are eager to change what is in place. Because what I did say early on when I spoke, was that what we have changed it to certainly has not made it better. So I'm glad to hear that they've come to that position and that they're prepared to remove what's in place. But in the meantime, Madam Speaker, in between time, this is the law.
And they want to follow the law.
So until the law is changed, we are required to follow the law. So today, even though we are expressing an intention to change it, and for the first time we're hearing from our colleagues, in treating with Mr. Phillips as the recommendee, We have to go with the law. Now, I know, Madam Speaker, they would like to blame the government for everything. You heard the government being castigated today. The government incompetence, the government this, the government that. Madam Speaker, they are trying to give the public the impression that it is something that the government did or didn't do. Why we are in this conundrum. Madam Speaker, let me point out to you where we are with respect to this matter. I want to quote for you, Madam Speaker, and for the Madam Speaker, I want to quote for you the strictures of the law that hold all of us in place here today. Commissioner of Police and Deputy Commissioner of Police Selection Process Order 2015. Section 3, subsection E. The Commission shall then take into account all information on the candidates and thereafter establish an order of merit list. Whether we like it or not, whatever we want to do, whatever we intend to do, this is what the law says has to apply today. So the Commission has done that, not the government. The government has no role. I try to point out to you, Madam Speaker, how anxious the government was in the beginning of our term. We discovered that we couldn't even initiate the process. When we took a little step forward to try to initiate the process, my colleagues went to court and challenged the initiation of the process, and the judge cauterized that. And they make it look as if the government was doing the worst possible thing by interfering in the process. The government has and had no role because the law does not give the government a role. But today, all my colleagues who spoke, fulminating about the government's incompetence and the government bungling in a process in which the government has no role. And some of them follow the law. You are breaking the Constitution. And having said that for 10 minutes, the next 15 minutes, try something, do something, come with something. I mean, I know it's vacation time, but you could have gone on the beach. But we had to be here to conduct this business. Madam Speaker, the law then says, the Commission shall select the highest graded candidate. So now it puts a stricture on the Commission as to which candidate, the highest graded candidate on the order of merit list, and submit that candidate name to the President, not to the Cabinet, not to the Prime Minister, in accordance with the procedure as set out in Section 123 of the Constitution. It says nothing there about the Cabinet or the government. The one authority in this country that has no role in this process is the Cabinet. The President has a role. The Commission has a role. It is only when it comes before this House that we, the executives, begin to have a role. So what was all this story about the government, this and the government that want to misinform the public again as usual, because everything that goes wrong in the country, the government. And when they were in government, they sat on it and did absolutely nothing, and coming here today with all kinds of suggestions and solutions. Madam Speaker, then it goes on. That order of merit list. Even if we thought, as we thought or didn't think, that a new commission or the same commission would have been in place, we said here after the GST report, take it back to the commission. Let them see what was unacceptable and let them review it. Today I'm hearing my colleague from Orapuch West accusing accusing me of the Martin West, that I gave instructions to the commission to go and interfere with the process, and the commission is now acting under the instruction of the Prime Minister. That is the kind of thing they talk, hoping that anybody without sense would believe that the vast majority of people in this country are intelligent people and will not fall for that, Madam Speaker. Because no such thing happened. As soon as you reject one nominee on the notification, it automatically goes back to the commission because the commission is the only authority to proceed with it from there. But you have to say something, even though it's not true. And then, Madam Speaker, it says, Section 4, use of order of merit list in certain circumstances. That's Section 4 of the order under the Constitution. Right? It says, where the order of merit list is exhausted, the process set out in this order shall be recommended. Madam Speaker, so there's an order of merit list established at the commission under law. They haven't sent me a copy because they don't communicate to the Prime Minister. They haven't sent the House a copy, I don't know. But what I do know is that the law says you will do this until the list is exhausted. So what is all this advice about we don't know where it's going to end, we don't know what to do, the government brought no solution, the government brought no proposal? Madam Speaker, it is cast in law that a merit list exists, and I'm hearing from the text that they all read today, that the commission said they sought senior counsel advice. Maybe they were thinking that the merit list could have been adjusted or could have been reviewed in some way or changed. The senior counsel advice that they got and others got is that that merit list under law exists and it has not been made obsolete. So what's all this advice to not follow the merit list, but follow the law? The merit list is the law. And you coming here every day is the law. And you voting against it is the law. Or voting for it, that's the law. And they congratulate themselves as though they're making some discovery and they're standing in the public interest when all they're talking is hooey. Madam Speaker, it is here spelled out in the law. And then it goes on in Section 5 to say validity of the merit list. And I'm sure the senior counsel would have read this. Validity of the merit list, Section 5. For the purposes of this order, the order of merit list shall be valid for a period of 1 year. So the only thing we can look at in this house is when does that 1 year expire, and the commission will then tell us we have nobody else on the merit list. Only then, Madam Speaker, can the process be legally restarted. So all this advice about restarting the process and changing the this and only when that merit list is exhausted, and only the commission will tell us that. I don't know who's on the merit list. I don't know how many on the merit list. But what I do know, that the government has no authority to interfere with the merit list. And Madam Speaker, to come back to the point about the leader of government business and we didn't want to debate, if I get up in this house tomorrow and say we should abolish capital punishment, and that's the government's position going forward, does that mean that it's abolished? Doesn't it mean you have to have a process in the parliament to change the law to do it? So all that the leader of government business did was to indicate to the country early, to stop all kinds of mischief, that we will not be supporting Harold Philip because he doesn't meet the condition that we will support. Simple as that. And having said that, Madam Speaker, right? Pretty talk this evening. The government should have come with a flight plan. I mean, what are you all going to give up? You fight a whole election campaign, rolling not fit. You come today, no flight plan. This is the flight plan. It is called law. This is the flight plan. The flight plan that we are following is Legal Supplement Part B, Volume 54, number 128, 16 December 2015. That's the flight plan. If you deviate from this, then we end up at a destination where even my colleagues in here will put on their self-appointed robes and run to court to challenge what the government did. This is the flight plan. We're following the law. Now, they want to confuse me. Half of them saying follow the law. The other half saying give me a new flight plan. You will not confuse this government. Then I heard another one, Madam Speaker, of my honorable colleagues on the other side, saying that he is not supporting going back to the veto. Who ever said that? Who on this side ever advocated going back to the prime ministerial veto? Put up a straw man and try to shoot it down. Wasting a valuable vacation, fighting something that was never said. It was a point of departure, what it used to be, right? And of course, he goes on to say that we should start the process through a new merit list. Whoever said that? Where that came from? How could you be following the law and at the same time saying a new merit list? The level of confusion, or I'm going to be kind, I wouldn't say outright dishonesty. I would say confusion, and they just keep confusing the public over and over and over because they want to create an issue where none exists. If we have to come here 3 or 4 times because the commission keeps sending people to us, that is what the law demands, and those of you who are too busy don't come. And the people don't know who to send to the parliament next time. And the reason why we've come in the vacation as we have come is because this matter is so important, because we understand that we have to have a commission of police in place. You didn't understand that for 3 years.
Fire them.
You come praising yourself about the appointment of what's the name? Ms. Susan Craig. That was done because he wasn't here. If he was here, it was Manima. Madam Speaker, he comes quoting Michael Harris. Michael Harris is very concerned about what the government's credibility will be if the government do this and if the government do that. 1 week ago, Madam Speaker, last week, Tuesday, the government made it abundantly clear through the government's premier spokesperson in the parliament, the leader of government business, that the government will stand by its position and will not be supporting Harold Philip. 1 week later, Michael Harris has an article about what the government is going to do. And they come here and quote Michael Harris. I wanted to quote Michael Harris throughout, not just cherry pick, because he writes some very interesting things about other things. So now that you've made him a Bible, we'll quote it in here. Madam Speaker, we're getting advice. Because, of course, if you spend the whole evening criticizing, you have to give advice, because we are stupid, so we don't know what we're doing. We have no plan. We are now in a spider web, we can't come out. So you know what the objection is? Change the law. Change the law. So what they're inviting us to do, Madam Speaker, is to abandon the existing law and put ourselves into their hand to change the Constitution so they could play the same kind of games they've been playing for the last 2.5 years. No, thank you. I beg to move.
Honorable members, the question is, be it resolved that the notification of the President of the nomination by the Police Service Commission of Mr. Harold Philip to the Office of Commissioner of Police be approved. All in favor say aye. Any against? No. The noes have it. The notification is not approved. Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam. Yes. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn sine die. Quite sure.
Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn sine die. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned sine die.